The RFA dominoes continue to fall. Defenseman Charlie McAvoy is signed with the Boston Bruins. Plus, we have the long-term extension between Jared Spurgeon and the Minnesota Wild to discuss. And we have some other NHL news and rumors to add as well. We're going to know all the latest coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. We have some more breaking news with some more NHL signings. RFA defenseman Charlie McAvoy with the Boston Bruins has finally come to terms on a new contract. He signed a 3-year deal with the Bruins with an average annual value of $4.9 million. Now the key here with McAvoy, like many of these guys, is the third year of the contract has a much higher salary, and it's straight salary with no bonuses included. The first 2 years is divided up between salary and signing bonuses, but year 3 is a $7.3 million straight salary, which will directly impact his next contract and his next qualifying offer, as he will still be a restricted free agent at the end of that contract. Now, with some other guys that we've seen do these 3-year deals, there is one difference between McAvoy and some of these other contracts, like Zach Werenski, for example, and Timo Meier is another good example as well. Their contracts will take them to being 1 year removed from being an unrestricted free agent. So if they get that much bigger salary as a qualifying offer, they can sign a 1-year deal if they choose to, and thus making them a unrestricted free agent at the earliest possible age in the first year of eligibility. Whereas in McAvoy's case, he wasn't considered a full-fledged RFA. He's what they call a 10.2 free agent, which means he is restricted, but he's not eligible for an offer sheet, as we've discussed before, just due to the fact that he hasn't played enough games compared to the other players here. So in that regard, he needs 2 more years of service to become an unrestricted free agent. Therefore, Charlie McAvoy will not be able to become an unrestricted free agent after 1 more year at the end of this deal. But either way, it gets him a $7.3 million qualifying offer. But a qualifying offer is only a 1-year contract, so he'd have to do that and then do that again to do back-to-back 1-year deals in order to become a UFA at the earliest possible time. So that may or may not happen, but either way, it gives him a lot of negotiating leverage to get a much bigger salary on his next contract. But it was believed that he was preferring a longer-term deal. I think this is a bit of a compromise between he and the Bruins to kind of help with their salary cap situation. And obviously with that Werenski contract kind of was used as a comparable as well. So to me, it's a fair deal for sure. I think McAvoy will earn this money. I think it's a good signing. But like many of these guys, this is the latest strategies that the final year of your contract, if you're still an RFA, you want a significantly higher salary, so that they're kind of forced to offer you that as your qualifying offer on your next deal. That's the trend. It makes a lot of sense from the player's perspective, and certainly a trend that I fully expect to continue. Now, like I said here as well, because he wasn't a full RFA, it's a little bit less leverage there. He can't use the offer sheet in any way, as any kind of threat to bump up and get a bigger salary or to get this contract done. Brock Besser, the Canucks, is in a very similar predicament. He's also a 10.2 free agent, so he's not considered a full-fledged RFA, is in the same predicament here. However, last we've heard, there really isn't any more news on the Besser Canuck front. There still seem to be a ways away in reaching a contract. Now, in other RFA news and rumors as well, there's still a big divide between Brayden Point and the Tampa Bay Lightning. NHL insider Pierre LeBrun's reported that there's quite a philosophical difference here. It looks as though they were offering like a bridge deal in the $5 million range, and that's certainly not going to cut it at all. However, in the past, we've seen other stars in Tampa, like Kucherov and Stamkos, take very similar team-friendly bridge contracts, but obviously this restricted free agent class is kind of changing the landscape here. They're changing the times in the NHL and how these contracts are going to go. They want the big money that you normally get on the long-term deals, but they want the shorter-term deals to be able to keep escalating their salaries and to be able to keep cashing in as the cap rises over time, which certainly makes sense. There is some risk involved, but it's kind of becoming a little bit more like the NBA, where you see more of these 2- and 3-year contracts of big money. And then, of course, in the NBA, though, they have the option of having like player options and team options and things so they can opt out and make more money, like we've seen with like LeBron James, for example. He continually opts out of his contracts to kind of re-sign at a higher value as the cap goes up and as he can continue to earn more and more money over time. So overall, we'll see here what happens, but there's still a lot of RFAs out there. Now, I know with Mikko Rantanen and the Avalanche, Adrian Dater, who covers the team for Colorado Hockey Now, indicates he doesn't feel like the Mitch Marner contract is going to have any influence on the Avalanche and their ability to get this contract for Rantanen done. They kind of feel like they're different types of players and that they have kind of their opinion on where things need to be for a contract, and that the Marner deal isn't really going to have any influence over that negotiation. Now, of course, as time drags on and we get closer to the season starting, that very well might be a situation that changes a little bit. Now, in Colorado's case, as well as unlike most of these other teams, they do have more salary cap flexibility. So if he does sign after the season starts and he ends up with a higher average annual value for year one, that's not such a problem for them like it is for other teams. So either way, I know they want to get him under contract and get him back in the fold here. They preferably would not want him to miss all of training camp, but they do seem to be holding firm here not to go too crazy in a deal. They've already acknowledged the fact he's going to end up being the team's highest paid player based on the fact that other guys like McKinnon and Landeskog have pretty team-friendly contracts based on how they've performed the last few years here as well. But either way, the Rantanen deal does not seem to be influenced by the Marner deal as of yet. Same thing with Point in Tampa. So those two negotiations very well could drag on a bit longer before we see a resolution. Now, as we know, prospect defenseman of the Dallas Stars organization, Julius Honka, officially acknowledged that he wanted to trade from the Stars organization when training camps get underway. GM Jim Nils acknowledged this publicly as well. There is believed to be a couple of teams interested, primarily the Montreal Canadiens, and to another degree, maybe not quite as deep as the Carolina Hurricanes, which is certainly a little bit surprising considering all the D that the Canes have, and even some good young D as well. But apparently they do have interest. Montreal kind of think being the primary team involved in trade talks with the Dallas Stars on this front. Now, many believe the Stars will likely take a draft pick in return to get him a fresh start, but Montreal apparently prefers to actually move a roster player instead of a pick in this regard. That's what's being reported right now. I'm not sure if they'd take maybe a player like a Charles Hudon, for example, who I'm kind of surprised in a way is still with the Habs. Obviously, it's something that's been rumored for some time that he might be on his way out. He did get a qualifying offer and get re-signed this summer, so he's on another one-year contract. There is a bit of a logjam at the forward position for the Habs. They have a lot of guys that can take those spots. Some younger players looking to earn bigger roles. So it would not be surprising if they can work out a deal here with Dallas to bring in a young defender, give him a fresh start, and get a chance to move out one of their forwards who kind of needs the same kind of situation. Might be able to catch on in Dallas and progress their careers. Hard to say, but either way, the Montreal Canadiens appear to be the front runners right now to obtain Julius Honka from Dallas, and it is preferred that they trade a player, not a draft pick, in return for this type of deal. Now, on another note here, we had a pretty big trade rumor just a few days ago talking between the Anaheim Ducks and the Carolina Hurricanes, trading defenseman Justin Falk from Carolina to Anaheim in exchange for what was believed to be Andre Kasha as the return package going back. There was an interview with GM Bob Murray of the Anaheim Ducks where he was not too pleased about the fact that Kasha's name was leaked as being a part of this deal. He believes that the Canes organization, maybe even ownership, had something to do with that as the player that they preferred to get back in the deal. I really don't know if there's any proof to that or not, or how that went down, but many believe right now that the deal's probably all but dead. It was believed that Falk wanted a 7-year contract extension, have any chance to waive his no trade to go to the Ducks organization. Not sure exactly what the money was required on the deal, but obviously those negotiations did not really get very far, and that contract negotiation and extension was never reached. Obviously, if that had been, we might have had ourselves a trade here to announce, but obviously that's not come to be, and considering these comments and the fact that contract never went to be, Falk's in his camp with Carolina, Kasha's in camp with the Ducks, I think we're probably safe to say that the deal is dead, although you never know, things could be revisited here at any time. Sometimes, as many of the NHL insiders say, one phone call can change everything. I do believe that the Carolina Hurricanes still want to trade Falk, and I believe that the Ducks would still like to obtain a player of his caliber, of a right shot D who can provide some offense. I'm just not sure that this deal is going to work. I know with Kasha, I think the Ducks are probably concerned about his long-term health. He obviously battled multiple injuries last year, including a concussion and a torn labrum in his shoulder as well, and missed a significant period of time. But he can certainly be a game breaker and has the ability to be a 25 to 30 goal scorer. At least I think he can be, if he can stay healthy and play in the right situation. So I guess we'll see. But either way, General Manager Bob Murray apparently not too pleased about the fact that Kasha's name was released in the media. Now, of course, one other quick note here as well, the NHL will be suspending Washington Capitals Russian center iceman Evgeni Kuznetsov. He did meet with Gary Bettman, as we had discussed before. He would be doing before training camps open. That did happen. We were waiting for the decision from Bettman's office, which has finally been announced, that he's going to be suspended for 3 games, which is kind of surprising considering the IHF banned him for 4 years from international competition because of the positive cocaine test. Now the NHL is only suspending him for the first 3 games of the season. If anything, this might actually help the Capitals buy some time because they need to make some moves in regards to their cap situation. They are over, need to get compliant before the season starts. But because he's considered suspended for the first 3 games, his cap hit does not count against their cap for that period of time. I know it's not a long time. We're only probably talking about a week to 10 days, depending on their schedule, which I don't have directly right here in front of me. But either way, it might buy them a little bit of time. It'll help them be cap compliant for opening night at least. That way they don't have to force a deal. They can take their time, have a little extra time here to figure out what they're going to do to get everything in line. But 3 games certainly seems quite light considering what the IHF has decided on Kuznetsov. I know we saw comments from Alexander Ovechkin as well, saying he'd reached out to him and offered any support if need be. They just want to make sure that he's okay in dealing with this. But ultimately, it just seems kind of a little bit of a slap on the wrist compared to what we've seen in other situations. But the NHL apparently does not take that very seriously and felt 3 games was sufficient. So, of course, as always, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments, what you think of that suspension and how it's going to impact, potential any other future situations that we see in the NHL in this regard. Of course, we also saw Jared Spurgeon of the Minnesota Wild ink a 7-year contract extension, the first big move by newly hired GM Bill Guerin of the Wild. Jared Spurgeon's certainly been one of their top guys. Spurgeon certainly has been a terrific player for them and led age 29 last year, put up career highs. So he gets a 7-year deal at over $7.5 million. Their first 4 years of the contract, he gets a full no-move clause. In the final 3 years, he gets a modified no-trade with a 10-team list that he can reject a trade to. So certainly a decent signing in a sense with the AAV. I think Spurgeon is a great defenseman. Kind of flies under the radar a little bit because of where he plays. Like I said, he put up career highs though. My only concern is the length of the term. 7-year deal, which is something that's going to kick in when he's age 30. Already put up career highs at age 29. He's a terrific defenseman. Seems like a really great guy, great person. He's well beloved by his teammates. So I do think keeping him was a priority. I think it's justified in that sense. Just concerned with all the other contracts they've got now with guys like Parise and Suter and even Zuccarello, who they signed as an unrestricted free agent this summer. And now they get this contract for another player who's going to go deep late into their 30s, after having career highs late into their 20s. It just seems very logical that he's going to start to decline pretty early in his contract and might become another issue. But I mean, at the same time, for right now, based on today at least, I think Spurgeon making $7 million is justified. I think he's a good contract in that sense. Just a little concerned over how long term it is. But of course, as always, want to know what you think down below in the comments. What do you think of this contract as well as the McAvoy signing, as well as the other deals that we've talked about here today? So let me know what you think down below and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching and I will catch you next time.